Good afternoon. Welcome to Al Gatler Live. So good to have you here today. Have another wonderful guest to join us in a few minutes. You know, the thing on my mind today, I was watching television this morning and they had some video of the new Postmaster General talking about improving the Postal Service, which, in case you're not aware and didn't suffer through it, some of the stuff I suffered through during the holidays, service was terrible. And his solution is to raise prices and slow down delivery. And so what difference does it make if a letter comes the next day? Then the next clip they showed was of the Postal Union president saying we have to abide by the Constitution and give the best possible service for the lowest price. Do you see a problem there? Do you see opposites? You know, we in bizarro world, what's going on? So I don't know. There are thousands and thousands of postal workers who probably want to do a great job and just need motivation. So, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine last week and she called it the crisis of leadership. I think we're in that crisis, but maybe next week we'll see some programming about that. If you caught my show yesterday, fabulous young man, an entrepreneur, Jake, was on from trendsetters.com. Take all the vowels at it. Check out Trendsetters, talking about Gen Z. Great stuff. Never a shortage of fantastic guests. Today is no different. My guest today is Betty Galligan. She is a PR and marketing professional. She is the principal of Newberry Public Relations and Marketing. She's going to be talking to us today about the 3 ways to survive a PR crisis. She is a seasoned pro accredited in PR by the Public Relations Society of America and is a longtime member of its prestigious Council's Academy. That sounds very impressive. So without any further ado, let me bring my guest on with you today, Betty Galligan. Hi, Betty.
Hi, Al.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Am I crazy about the post office? What do you think?
No, for sure.
I'm like, what in tarnation? The world's gone upside down. It's crazy. But, you know, hey, well, listen, we're not here to talk about the post office unless they have a crisis, which I think every day is a crisis right now. But I love this topic. And I was just talking to you before we came on the air. I've got a little background in this in a number of ways. First of all, I'm a member of the media for 30 some odd years. Have seen lots of crisis not done well, lots of spokespeople, lots of approaches not done well. Saying hi to Ann, who's one of our regular viewers. Hi, Ann. How are you? So glad you're here. I think that the crisis messaging that happens as a result of a crisis is certainly one that most companies, organizations don't think of. Would you think about? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's very important to know what your message is, obviously, and be able to articulate it.
Yeah.
But during a crisis, what happens is that, you know, the stress is so high that sometimes your brain just can't think properly.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
So your background has been in this in PR and marketing and messaging. And so just give us a little bit of your background and let's jump into this really interesting topic.
Sure. Well, when I graduated from college, the first job that I got and the only jobs that I've had have been in public relations and marketing agencies and ad agencies. So we had numerous clients at one time. So it wasn't like we were just working for just one, like, you know, corporate in-house type of a scenario. I was always working in an agency where you're always juggling different things going on, different clients going on that you have to do work for. And when a crisis hits, that's when, you know, the rubber hits the road and the true professionals really come out. You know, your training really does come out at that time too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, Betty, I usually ask people where they're talking to us from. And I think, you know, most people not find it a mystery. There's a 20-pound parka in the back of you in your office there. you like me are in New England, so I get it. You know, where you don't like the weather right now. Wait a minute, it'll change. But you did here today up in northwestern Vermont. So, but anyway, just teasing. So you have this background. Have you always been in New England? You've always been in the Rhode Island area?
Always been in the Rhode Island area and also worked in the Boston area during my 35-year career. And I was trying to think if I had crises when I was a new professional.
Yeah.
And when I thought back on it, I realized that I didn't. But I do recall as an intern, even seeing a crisis when I was an intern, working at PM Magazine, which was the forerunner for like those news magazine type shows.
Yeah, 7 o'clock on Fox or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in the morning. It was a morning show. Actually, I think it was the afternoon too. But Matt Lauer was one of the
one of the original hosts.
Yeah, one of the original
Yep.
hosts. But back then, I remember there was this problem with one of the segments, and the producers all had to come together, and the interns had to go and see what was going on, and we felt a lot of stress in the room, and there was some sort of problem. And I just remember one of the hosts just being really calm, and just thinking and not talking, like going crazy with stress, but just really listening and trying to figure out a strategy. And that really stuck in my mind as how best to handle something when everything's hitting the fan, if you will.
Right.
Maintaining calm, listening, really being strategic, and then thinking and saying what the strategy is. So and model myself on that.
So there's a situation where, and by the way, you mentioned Matt Lauer. I mean, oh my gosh, I will never forget that morning. We have long been a Today Show family here, right down to my 18-year-old when she was a child. In the morning we woke up, and that disaster on that show, personality wise, occurred. And boy, it was palpable watching the other hosts and just, talk about, not saying the right thing at the wrong time, the wrong thing at the right, whatever, not just, it was crazy. It was crazy. And it all happened so fast. So that brings us around to the question of, Betty, can you pre-plan for a PR crisis?
You absolutely can. Yes. And how you do that is, there's a couple of different ways, but obviously the first thing that you should be thinking about is like, who is going to be affected by something that could potentially happen to my business, to me as an individual, to my organization, to my scenario, whatever the scenario is. You can actually think in advance of the brainstorm on the kinds of things that can happen and who would be affected by this. And then your plan can be really, really simple. Your plan can just simply be, how can we best share information with these people that are going to be affected by this scenario?
Right.
What are the facts? Like, can we come up with some fact sheets or some facts about it? Maybe some backgrounders, things like that. And then actually write the statements out. A few sentences, right? A few paragraphs. Right. Write them out about the various scenarios now while you can actually think.
Yeah.
The rational brain. I mean, I just think about this because my mom passed away recently, and
I'm so sorry.
And my father-in-law, thank you. But when you're planning for a funeral, you actually pre-planning helps, because believe me, even though you know that the death could be impending, the minute it happens, you're not in the right frame of mind.
Right. Yeah. But and it's a terrible analogy to have to think about, but so is a crisis. So
absolutely right.
Yeah.
So do what you can while you can with a brain that's working, and flowing, and think about any kind of risks that are going to be to your company or your organization, and how would you minimize those risks? And that's really what a crisis plan is, and prevention. Prevention is really the key. I also like to talk about to my clients, what kind of a relationship do you have with the media? Being a former media person, you would understand. So let's say that you're my former media contact, and you and I have been feeding you stories all along, and we've been working on stories together. I've been introducing you to my client, and you've been covering my client for a while. And then a crisis happens. Right. So I'm going to be able to speak to you, human to human, almost like a media friend, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that goes.
Well, and I think the important thing for people to understand too about that is, while we like to say friend, a reporter has a job to do, and be careful to understand what on the record is and what it isn't, and when you are and when you are not, because you may not be dealing with a friend when there's a story to be told and you blurt something out that actually is an important and crucial part of the story. So. Yeah, it's a great advice. So you have provided me some overlays. Is now a good time to put that first one up there and talk about that?
Oh, yes, let's talk about that.
All right, good deal.
Right.
So your first question is, are you at risk? And you mentioned some of this. You're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, a salesperson for a company, a coach, a consultant. You have to ask yourself these questions. And so tell me what these questions are about below.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's anyone who has a customer can be at risk for a PR crisis. And why is that? Because sometimes customers or clients can be dissatisfied. And what do they do when they're dissatisfied? They love to go tell all the people in the world how dissatisfied they are, right? So they may have social media channels, right? Mostly everybody does. And in today's day and age, I mean, this can spread like wildfire very quickly. So that's another reason, if you have customers, that they can be spreading that dissatisfaction very quickly. Yeah. Do you use social media? I mean, if you have a Facebook page, for example, LinkedIn, whatever, mostly it's Facebook, is a little bit more dramatic. But on social media, someone can go and just start posting away with some negative things. I call them, like, if you remember, if you were drinking in a bar, they would call it beer muscles if you were drinking beer, right?
Yeah.
Well, what happens on social media is that people get keyboard muscles. And
wow. Yeah, that's so true. Wow. That's a great comparison, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep. So they're just typing away and they would type things and write things that they would never say to someone's face.
Right.
And that's a pretty critical part of dealing with a crisis.
Yeah.
You could also have, at a company, you could have a person who is at the helm that is actually behaving naughtily, a bad CEO, as we call it, someone who is just doing something.
Oh, we've never seen any leaders fall from grace. Are you kidding me? Stop it.
Yeah. So that could be the case, or even working with someone like in the Matt Lauer situation, in the Me Too movement, we've heard a lot of different stories come up, and that would be something that would be of the level of a PR crisis.
Yeah.
And sometimes the first person that you should call really is the PR person, right? To get them involved in a early stage of a crisis.
Right.
If you don't have someone to call, then maybe that's also part of a crisis, because precious time is ticking away.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, that's why you're here. And we were talking about this before we came on the live stream here, that my philosophy is, if you have, we're talking about a good sized crisis at a corporation, at a nonprofit organization, and really it's operational and something needs to be dealt with. That first person that gets in front of the media probably shouldn't even be the CEO, because they should be, in my opinion, working on the crisis, not on, glad handling the media and trying to turn a negative situation into it's no big deal. Yeah. So what's your take on that? Do you agree with me on that?
I do. I do feel that the person who should be speaking, right, is the person who can convey the most leadership, the most confidence, the most strength in a situation that's so volatile. So in some cases, it should be the leader of the organization. But to your point, I mean, I do agree that if it's taking the person away from the crisis, right, then I'm going to say no, because they really need to be working on the crisis.
Right.
So I think your point is taken that way. But I do think that there are cases where, especially if there's employees involved, right? Because employees want to know, like, oh my gosh, what just happened at my organization, and sometimes an outside person can come in. Now, here's a great reason to have an outside person, is that outside person is removed, like a third party person. They're not as tied emotionally to a situation,
right,
and they can speak clearly. They are trained to speak clearly. I know right now I'm looking at my camera. I'm looking over at you on my screen. So my eyeballs are like shifting around. I've just realized that.
Shifty character. That's the reality of live stream. I get it. I mean, in my case, not only am I talking to you, but I'm also my own control room and all that.
Yes,
so I am very cognizant of when my eyes dart away for a second. Mm-hmm. When something lights up, I get it. So I know what you mean, though.
Yeah.
I've coached a lot of people during this Zoom period of time that we're in, to please look at the camera. Interesting. I saw something the other day on models. It was in the Wall Street Journal. They did a study as to when to look at the camera for a model and when not to look at the camera for a model, when they're peering off into the distance. And it boils down to the type of product. If you're selling fashion, feel free to peer off, Yeah. If you're selling pharmaceuticals, probably look at the camera, probably look directly at the the buyer in the print ad or in the video and be very direct. So that's kind of fascinating. But for spokespeople, 100% right.
Absolutely. And if you have a mask, like think of now you've got this going on because you're on this, a lot of times people are having to wear a mask now and on camera. But I do think that that's really key. And when you're training this spokesperson to be making the best presentation, especially whether it's by Zoom or in front of a video camera, live at a press conference, really looking people in the eye, and then also not doing the I really feel, that's just not conveying any strength there.
Right.
It's not confident, right?
Yeah,
that's
absolutely makes sense. So just going through your list of, see, we've hit everything. You said you have a brick and mortar business location. So meaning, well, let me ask you, how does that factor in whether it's brick and mortar or online?
Because business interruption can happen, like a pandemic. We're all in a crisis.
Okay.
So were you able to open your office? Were you able to open your business? And then things can happen at the business in brick and mortar, just like it can happen at your home. A roof can cave in, or someone can drive in through the window. And I've had crises where in a parking lot, a person got run over, and there was a death. Like that was like one of the worst situations, pretty much involving death. I would say those are the worst crises that I've had to handle.
Sure.
But brick and mortar, it can be a, business interruption of any kind, and anything that can happen there. It can even be like, look at what happened with violence and looting, over the past summer, right? And in general with that. So, brick and mortar location is one of the reasons that you could be at risk if you have that.
Yep, absolutely. And then you mentioned employees, which, boy, I have other strong feelings about this one. We'll get to lawyers later, but employees, when there is a crisis, I think that it's a big mistake that people often make, and that is they rush to get to the media. They rush to cover up the story. They don't tell the employees what's going on and give the employees 3 talking points, 5 talking points about the crisis. What's your take on that?
That's a good one too, because we usually try to say, don't let the employees do any of the speaking because they're not the ones that are, trained or the most knowledgeable about the whole entire situation.
Sure.
It can be really, really emotional. So sometimes I know the media loves to go to an employee and try to get a story. And what are your feelings about this? And then putting a camera in
right.
But in a lot of cases, the employees are the ones that are not up to speed, as you're saying, because they may or may not know. Let's say that they just got evacuated from a building and they're all standing outside and the media is there trying to get something. And if no one is communicating with the news media to give them the story, to give them the facts and explain what's happening, then they will go to the employees and get the story because they have a deadline. They've got to get it. They know that they're going to, this person works there. They're connected to the facility. So I feel that that's important too, to keep them posted, but to let them know that they're really not the ones that are authorized to speak to the news media in a case of crisis.
It's interesting. Another case that's obviously very current, the Tiger Woods car crash, and referring to watching the news again this morning. The sheriff's department in that county gave this one deputy who was first on scene a tremendous amount of trust. They even allowed him to walk out with the camera and the reporter and go back to the scene and discuss it. And I said to my wife, I said, they must really trust this guy. I mean, he's got to be an officer in waiting, a PIO, public information officer in waiting.
Yes.
Because they allowed him an awful lot of spans. He was able to answer a lot of questions. And to your point, both our points. I mean, I want the employees to know what they need to know, but I also want them to know that it's not their job to comment to the media, comment to anybody. But if they're, with their family and there's an inaccuracy, at least they have enough facts to say, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened because our boss told us so. So
correct. Yeah. And that's really like your first most important audience, right? Is your employees, and keeping them in the loop and in the know, so that because they can go. This is why another reason they're on the list of being at risk, because they can go rogue you know?
That's the word that just came to my brain.
Yeah. And they can be saying, well, they didn't tell us anything, or they can just decide to go to the media, which is why I always say any statement or anything that you write and that you communicate to your employees or anyone can be leaked to the news media. So even though you're thinking that you just wrote an internal memo, there's nothing stopping that employee from thinking that they're going to send that to their friend who works at a news station, or just to send it there.
Well, but even though you say that, they can also go, hey, I'm right here now. I'm trying to get my phone in the shot here, right? I'm here now, and this is happening at my company. Oh my God, it's incredible. I mean, there's that, right?
There's that.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Now, one example was I used to be married to a correctional officer, and there was a lockdown at the prison, right? And here's all the wives sitting around at home and being scared of what's happening to their husbands behind closed prison doors. And we didn't know anything, and we were glued to the television set, right?
Wow.
And this is a little bit before social media. So the news media showed up, and not one prison person came out and official and said anything about what was happening. Wow. So who did they go to? All of the prisoners' spouses or girlfriends or guys that were all standing around trying to just congregate at the gate to see what was going on inside.
Yeah.
So they were just getting like the most dramatic kind of comments, like, maybe what they just heard from like a cell phone call or something. And they were getting all the wrong information. Yeah. And it's so interesting because they could have easily just come out and said, look, there's a riot going on inside. Yeah. We don't know all of the facts. We're investigating it right now. And as soon as we know something, we will let you know, but we are locking down just for the safety of everyone. Like, just come out and say some basic statement.
Facts. I mean, facts, rule. If you can give facts without conjecture, and you're keeping people, it doesn't have, like you said, it doesn't have to have drama involved in it. It's just, I mean, I'm dating myself when I say Joe Friday, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts, but that's the thing that, giving facts is, I'm the PIO of a fire department, in my volunteer life. And, we will give the facts, but we're not going to give emotions, Yes. And it sounds cold and dry, but those are the facts.
Yes,
it's up to a news reporter to go back and maybe tell the story, but we're going to give you the facts. And as you just say, facts reign. If you can just tell people what's happening, if you're a husband or a wife who's sitting home and your spouse is a prison guard, is in a situation at a company where it's under lockdown, because God, there's more reasons why places are under lockdown than ever before in our history. That facts really do help a lot. So I'm going to put your graphic back up here and right now, because there's one person at the bottom of that list, the lawyer. And every time I see the lawyer get in front of the microphone initially at a crisis, I go, oh, good Lord, get that person away from the microphone. I mean, let me ask you, when the lawyer's in front of the microphone, what does it mean to you?
I have to be honest. I'm just going to be honest and say that I think there's some spinning going on in some ways, right?
Bam!
Yeah, bam!
It. Yeah.
Yeah. But, here's what happens. I have to say that there's some of this going on, not with all lawyers. Real great lawyers that totally get PR. But there are some lawyers who like the spotlight. There are some lawyers who say no comment. They do not want their clients to comment. That's like the kiss of death.
Right.
In the PR crisis. And especially today, because you say no comment, then they're going to go get comment from someone else, as I just mentioned, right?
Yes.
And there are some great lawyers that can be wonderful spokespersons for their clients. I would say mostly you catch them coming out of a courthouse. You've seen that kind of a scenario.
Yes, absolutely.
Verdict, of course. Lawyers all the way, I mean, they just walk straight out of the verdict, or, the reaction to the verdict.
And that's a different kind of a crisis, and that's part of the theater of courthouse. But when you have a problem at your corporation, and you send the lawyer out in front of the microphones, right away that goes, oh, this is not good.
Yeah. And in some cases, sending the PR person out isn't good either, right? They want someone on the inside. They want someone who's, authorized to speak from that company. And
no, but here again, this is where I differ a little bit. If you're the CEO, I say, Ms. Galligan is presently working on the crisis situation. These are the facts. We will have a press conference tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., which Ms. Galligan will then, be present and be able to answer your questions. But until such time, she is currently working on the crisis. And, I'm happy to answer any questions about the facts of the situation right now. Boom. How do you feel about that?
Well, are you presenting yourself right now like you're working at the company? You're in
I'm the PR person and you're the CEO.
Absolutely. Perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Here's an example, like, if there was some sort of sensitive information or something about, and you send the PR person out because you're hiding behind that PR person.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Well, it's not a real crisis. It's a crisis of information. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
And sometimes it's because I'm the third party. I don't work there. So they don't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they
100%
think,
agree with you there. 100%. Yeah.
I mean, the media that I work with, they know from my reputation that I'm going to be answering the questions that they're going to have. But
right.
There are some people that just really want to constantly avoid answering the question instead of presenting facts and at least saying, I don't know, we're finding out right now. That's a perfectly acceptable answer. And that's how you can survive a PR crisis, is by giving the truth, right?
Right.
Not trying to hide behind some sort of spin, which is a terrible word that PR people hate,
I mean, on the other side of the pad, the camera, the microphone, I'm training reporters as a media person to say, make sure you ask one more question. And by that, I mean, go watch here I am dating myself again. Go watch an episode of Peter Falk's Columbo. Our best questions are the one we go, one more question. That's the one, in Columbo, the suspect is going down.
That's right, because they nailed him. They got the say something.
Or that's when the off the record, it feels like an off the record question occurs where they go, oh, one more thing. What were you, and then you're like, you answer that question, and then you go, oh man, I just answered a question that I really didn't intend on answering. So
True.
These are some inside tips, right, of that. Let's go to your next overlay and take a look what you say here. I love this. You say it takes years to build a reputation and seconds to lose it. Wow, that is so true.
Seconds. I mean, trust right down the tubes instantly. All the credibility that you spent years building, and one bad PR crisis that goes unprepared for or unheated, untreated, is definitely something that can bring a company down. And I have seen it.
Yeah,
I've seen it. And
there's a mini version of this too, Betty, that just came to me. This goes to Google reviews and social media reviews in general. And I never made the connection till just now, but that's 24-hour live PR where if you don't pay attention to it, man, oh man, one-star review can absolutely, people love negativity. I'm sorry. It's true.
They do. Negativity breeds negativity too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so, and sometimes I have noticed that with Google reviews that people would read one, and then if they see others that are great, then they can maybe discount
if they outweigh them. Yeah.
Yeah. We call it like you're making a deposit in a bank, right? With all your goodwill. Here's my goodwill deposit. Here's my goodwill deposit.
Yes.
And then when you make a withdrawal from a crisis, you've got no goodwill left in your bank account.
Right.
And that's the way to look at it, right? And social media is unbelievable because the power that social media has.
Absolutely.
And the trust that people put in social media, because it's their peers talking. It's like their peers are the ones saying this, not some corporate head, or some lawyer that they don't want to listen to. It's going to be their own regular people are saying this, so it's more credible, right?
Yeah, I also find too, it seems in some Google reviews like that when people do give a 1-star review, they're oftentimes pretty thoughtful. They're saying these are not all the times. There are lots of creeps out there, but they're like, the reason I thought about this is my wife was just heading off, and we were talking about the salon she's going to for the second time, and a gentleman had put a 1-star review on there and said, don't get your hair cut here if you're black, because this is not designed. And it was a great, thoughtful review. He's just basically saying, look, it's not the place to go. You know, if you have straight hair, great place. If you don't have straight hair, not the place to go. I thought, okay, not only did this gentleman take the time to write a review on a 1-star review, he had photos. It was like empirical evidence, and it was more or less a warning just to say, no, this is not the place for you. If you want to get your hair cut, if you have a certain ethnicity and a certain type of hair, this is not the place to go. And I found that really kind of interesting. But I have seen some places go down in flaming order. I travel a lot around the country. I very rarely have left some flaming, reviews and bad situations. But one in particular, an airport hotel outside of Cleveland. I mean, horrible response. A response blaming me for their problems. And so, I mean, I think your point of this reputation in years and gone in a minute, so true. Then you say in the middle, it takes 1 hour to spread internationally. Wow. 24 hours to defend a company in a meaningful way, or 21 hours to defend a company in a meaningful way. So let's talk about these three combined. I mean, what's the message here, Betty?
I mean, the message here is that with the news cycles and with the fact that social media is so instant and people are just constantly on it, it just goes to show how viral a negative story can go, and how you need to really be always managing your crises and monitoring your social media and what people are saying about you. So we always call it like have your finger on the pulse of what your customers are saying about you, about what your employees are saying. What your reputation is out there in the marketplace, because you really need to manage that on a constant basis. You can't just ignore it.
Yeah.
Now your story, like a little story about someone's hair salon, or like even, a little crisis in Rhode Island, for example, is not going to go internationally necessarily. Okay.
Right.
It won't always rise to that level of something that's an international crisis, but should it go international, it can go within, minutes, really.
Yeah. Well, again, but let me give you the news perspective of that, right? I mean, you may think it's a small thing, but if a one little twist of that story catches someone's eye, either on social media or in the media, the next thing you know, I mean, every story, I said in the local, medias that I worked in, every huge story starts off as local, right?
Yes.
So you got to remember that there are opportunities for people to take and twist some things. And as you point out, get in front of those stories 100%. I'm not sure why Ann's making that face, but, but yeah, I don't, something struck her interesting there. So, but yeah, so important.
Interestingly enough, related to that, I had a client come to me. They are a law firm, excellent law firm. And they happened to find that they actually are specialized in mesothelioma. So they have a lot of connections with people who test products, right? And things, and labs, for example. And so they happened to find out that the makeup that their daughter was using had asbestos in it.
Oh my.
And they had it independently tested several times, paid their own money, did it. And it was bought at Claire's, which is a boutique.
Yes.
For like girls love to go.
Yes, I have 3 daughters. I'm well aware of Claire's.
Yeah. So what happened was they came to me like in December and said, we don't know when we should be, should we do anything with this story? Can we do something with it? I'm like, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is terrible. They were worried that people were going to be buying gifts for their kids and with makeup in it. And then, we have video of her daughter, like putting the makeup on her eyes, and, she did her own little makeup blog, and it was like, oh my God, when you think about here, look at, I'm putting asbestos all over.
Yeah. Yes. My gosh.
It's scary. So we did this great, press release and launched it, and it launched locally, but it definitely went viral internationally.
Wow.
And the ramifications of that were that Claire's ended up taking off their cleaning their shelves of this makeup, which was really all we wanted. All the client wanted.
They did the responsible thing. Okay.
Responsible thing. And they ended up then declaring bankruptcy.
Wow.
We did emerge from bankruptcy months later. But what we also wanted was regulation. We wanted more regulation, more testing of makeup and things like that. And then,
so you were calling for responsibilities at a couple of different levels.
Exactly. And that was the result of that, which was great.
Yeah. That is a great outcome. Yeah.
But it's
By the way, Ann clarified how fast things can go bad, how fast you can get out there. And then
true.
she added one more expression, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's so true. And it is shocking how
Mhm.
bad it can go. So we've got one more overlay. And then this is the important one, right? This is the preventative measure one.
Yeah, this is what you want to do. You want to prevent damage and you want to stop any rumors that are happening. And this is that little graphic at the bottom there is what I was basically describing of what happened at the prison. When what happens in nature is that if there is a vacuum, like what goes into a vacuum? Well, air goes into a vacuum. So nature hates vacuums because there is really no such thing because air would rush into that vacuum.
Right.
Just naturally. So what happens in what I say in the news media is that the news media does not like a vacuum either when it comes to information and facts, and we don't want them filling in facts that are not factual.
Yeah.
Getting it from some other sources that really are not the ones authorized to speak on it or who have the whole entire story. Yeah. I think that's really more of the key, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You definitely want to prevent damage. You want to stop rumors from happening and just quell those rumors right away because that can be something that happens. And even like what you were saying earlier when you're asking that last Columbo-like question, right? There's a lot of people that may give their personal opinion because all of a sudden you start to feel comfortable with that media person asking you the question, and then you might want to add in your own opinion about what's happening. And you have to always remember, as the spokesperson, that it's not about you. The other thing that I just read this new research today, and I thought it was great. It was about University of Alabama did a research study about CEOs during crises, and they were saying that the best CEOs, or this is paraphrasing, the best CEOs that can emerge from a crisis in the best way are those who remain ambivalent about the facts, about the positive and negative things that are happening. Like, for example, the opportunities, the threats. Like, they're not just going one way. Oh, everything's a threat or everything's an opportunity. They're more like in the middle. They're more like ambivalent to either an opportunity or a threat, and they're remaining more neutral and open. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't be a one-way CEO with your own. It's not even your own opinion. It's your company. It's the situation that you're in, right? And it's not like what you think, really. It's what's going on. Here's an example, like a Jeep Cherokee. Jeep Cherokee.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got on one side, you got the people who do not want you to use that name. And on the other side, Jeep is trying to say, but we feel that Cherokee is a strong name, and we love the connotation that it brings to our products. And they're looking at it like in a positive way, but many people are looking at it like it's in a negative way.
Right.
So I'm saying that you can't be really 80% one side and 20% the other side as the CEO. You have to look at both sides, equally weigh them out.
Right.
And not let it really taint.
Well, I think in that case too, the question is it really honoring indigenous people of the Cherokee tribe, or is it not? And then it's up to the responsibility of the CEO to figure that out, right? As, by the way, someone who's driven a Jeep Cherokee since 1999, it's near and dear to my heart, and it's certainly something I've started weighing in my brain too. It's more than a brand; it's more than just a model. It's got to represent something. So it's so true. And there's a situation too where crisis is not even like nothing happened. You were sitting at your desk, and all of a sudden times have changed, and you're being held responsible to a different standard. Might not be the right word, but society changes, and now you've got to answer to some things. Suddenly you have a crisis. So as we're getting close to the end here, let's wrap it up for people. We promised we would give them 3 ways to deal with a crisis. So let's take it from number 1 through number 3. What's number 1 on your list?
Number 1, act quickly. Do not delay. Do not delay. So if you have a plan, this is a great time to get that plan going. Just get it out there. Have a statement at the ready. Maybe if you've written it, like I said, in advance, then that way you're good to go. Just make a few edits, change the scenario. Your spokesperson's trained and ready to go, and you're acting quickly.
Okay.
And because of the news cycle. And as part of that acting quickly in your statement, say what you're going to do, say what you know. So even if it's just a simple statement like, we're going to be looking into this further, we're going to be investigating to see exactly what happened. I feel like it's really important to state what it is that you're going to do.
Okay.
About it,
Yeah.
Second thing, be very, very transparent. Okay. There's no such thing as over communicating when it comes to communication during a crisis. So it's okay to, constantly you're not bombarding everyone, but every day you might want to send out a new update, especially to your stakeholders, as they call them, or your audiences, as I prefer to call them, of who's important to this story. Sometimes you have to tell the truth, even if it hurts. So that's being transparent. Yes. And again, like I said, if you do make a statement, and it will be shared. So whatever you're writing, don't think you're writing an internal memo, because it doesn't mean that it's always going to stay internal.
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing is to show compassion. You're really a human. Everyone is human. If you have emotion about the situation, because sometimes it can be emotional if there's a death or injury or scenarios that are really tough, show compassion. But only apologize if it's warranted. Be careful of that. And that's where lawyers come in and say, yeah, we don't want to have the culpability. Were you really saddened that this happened, or you were sad because you left the water out that made people slip and fall and whatever, right? So you don't want to be getting into that detail for that, so you can.
And that's the fine line between legal responsibility and PR and got it. Right.
And
I'll recap that then. You say, number one, act quickly.
Yes.
Don't let a lot of time go by.
Mm-hmm.
To be transparent when you can, give all the facts and let people know what's, what it's going out. And the facts are important. No emotion, just facts, Yep. And then number three, show compassion to the point of, what is really you're compassionate towards people affected, things like that. And yes, I think on number three, you do get the advice of your attorney. Just don't put him or her in front of the microphone, probably. That's my hard opinion. So, well, this is great. I've really enjoyed this conversation, because it's, to me, so key that I've learned over the years by observation, and then being on the other side of the table, helping people with this situation that requires lots of pre-thought. So I want to put up on the screen, you're Betty Galligan from Newberry PR. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, they can go to my website and send me an email, newberrypr.com. You can write to me at Betty, Betty, at newberrypr.com. I'm happy to help, or, I'll provide you with some advice and guidance if you ever find yourself in a crisis situation or just need PR. Mm-hmm. We're here for you.
But the time to not call Betty is when the crisis happened. Call her or email her here before and build a relationship.
Yes.
Because if you're calling her at 3 a.m. and you need help, it's probably already too late.
Yeah. But I have gotten those calls, and I have been able to help clients right there. You just get right up to speed and you just go.
Oh, sure you can. Yeah, call Betty regardless. But saying we'd like you to call her now and start planning today, and that would be really helpful. So, Betty, before you go, any last minute comments to the audience here? What you want them to know?
Yeah, I think that out of every crisis comes something positive. I've always said that, but that's been my experience. There's usually change. There's usually some sort of innovation, maybe, some more security protocols or processes that you can improve upon. So sometimes when a crisis hits, there's a reason for it, and, not to feel badly about it. It's more like, I don't want to say embrace crisis, because no one wants that, but should something happen, be open to the positivity that can come from a crisis. Yeah,
that's great. That's absolutely great advice, which is learn, right? Absolutely learn. So, Betty, it has been an absolute delight having you here. It's been an absolute delight getting to know you. I mention it often. You and I are part of a Friday morning group led by our friend Alan Langer, the Play Don't Pause group that started during COVID. And you're a fantastic part of that group. I'm so glad you could be here today. I hope folks reach out to you and start asking for advice now, because now's the time to plan for a PR crisis.
Thank you, Al. It's been great being on your show. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I'm going to have you head backstage. Stick around for a minute so I can say a proper goodbye. But for now, this is goodbye to the audience, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Well, once again, I'm sorry. I apologize. I keep bringing you fantastic guests with great advice, and Betty, no different. I love that conversation. I love the whole idea of crisis PR. It's something you got to think about now. With that, this is the last show for the week. I'll be back next week with some more exciting guests. Until then, we have a place to go for you to find some of the previous videos. I'm often asked, where can I find them? They're all over the place. Here are some of the channels. Probably the most difficult one to find them on is LinkedIn, unfortunately, which is one of our biggest audiences. But go to my profile page and you can find them there. YouTube is probably about the easiest place to find previous episodes of the show. With that, again, thanks for being here this week. We'll see you next week. Take care.